Just hours after the US claimed its war with Israel against Iran would end within weeks and not months, volleys of Iranian missiles towards Tel Aviv continued into the morning, and a new front was opened, with Iranian-backed Houthi fighters in Yemen firing one of their own towards Israel for the first time.
Our operations, with God's help, will continue until the declared objectives are achieved and until the aggression against all resistance fronts ceases.
In Yemen's capital Sana'a yesterday, thousands had come out to show their support for intervention. This a war increasingly hard to contain. Today, the Iranian Red Crescent rescue organisation released this video of a toddler it said firefighters had pulled from the rubble. It's been a month now since the US-Israeli assault began, with more explosions in Tehran overnight. An almost complete internet shutdown has left a population under attack, more isolated than ever. Iranian state media this morning released pictures of missiles it says damaged a US fighter jet yesterday, as well as pictures of an American air base it struck in Saudi Arabia.
We are now learning of casualties, injured. Several service members, American service members, have been injured in this Iranian strike on a base in Saudi Arabia.
Trump and the commanders of the US Army must have clearly understood that the region will turn into a graveyard for American soldiers. They will have no option but to surrender to the divine will of the heroic people and the brave fighters of Islam.
Fighting talk from Iran, but President Trump gave a different account.
They're being hit so hard, anybody would be negotiating. They are negotiating. They're begging to make a deal. They're begging to make a deal. Have to open up the Strait of Hormuz.
Some might coin it the Strait of Trump, but not perhaps in the way he might have hoped, with Iran blocking ships carrying oil exports through the strait. Its most powerful weapon, the global rocketing of fuel prices, not least in the US. Trump also had a warning for NATO allies.
There's always surprises with war. They can be very bad surprises. Wars are lost. It should be won. A tremendous mistake was when NATO just wasn't there. They just weren't there. It's going to make a lot of money for the United States because we spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on NATO, hundreds of protecting them. And we would have always been there for them. But now, based on their actions, I guess we don't have to be, do we?
Tomorrow, Pakistan will host talks with Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Egypt in an attempt to mediate between the US and Iran and what's left of its leadership.
Joining me now is Faria Al-Muslimi, a research fellow with the Middle East and North Africa programme at the think tank Chatham House, who focuses on Yemen and the wider Gulf region. Thank you so much for joining me. The Houthis have bided their time here, haven't they? We're now in the fourth week of this war. Why now?
I think Iran has run out of cards, and one of the last remaining cards is to activate proxies like the Houthis. But also another reason is the Houthi math itself. They could not afford to look like just defending Iran. They have a different math than Hezbollah would do or any other Iraqi militia, for example. So by now, I think they have come to a moment, in addition to Iran, that it's time to pay back Iran's grooming for them for the last 20 or so years. But I also think because they have noticed that the roadmap that they were trying to hope with Saudi Arabia, which also give them a lot of financial incentives, is coming to an end. So I think it came to a moment of ground zero, more or less, for the Houthis, but also for Iran in a different ways.
And how worried should we be about this? Could this lead to a regional escalation?
We must be worried. The Houthis are even more reckless than Iran. They also sit on a similarly strategic strait, which is Bab el-Mandeb, similar to Hormuz. They are also willing to go far as anyone would actually imagine. And they are closer in geography to the Gulf economic and oil infrastructure. And they have less to lose than Iran. So in a lot of ways, we should be worried, especially keeping in mind already Hormuz Strait is under pressure. I think that will lead to an ultimate, to a further prices increase of oil. It will lead to a further destabilization of the Middle East, but also it will lead to a further suffering of millions of Yemenis under the Houthis' control. And I think it will give Israel a new legitimate excuse to bomb Yemen as it did last year in the past. So in a lot of ways, we must be concerned that this is another U-turn that we did not see. I will lie if I say I see this happening, but it will also not be any good for anyone.
And the Houthis have essentially said, we're in this until we get our objectives. What do you think their objectives are?
There are a few objectives the Houthis has. One is to demonstrate loyalty to Iran. Two, to provoke Saudi Arabia to pay them more money. And three, to project power internationally and regionally furthermore. So until this actually war for non-Houthi reasons, for non-Yemen reasons stop, they will continue to do it as long as they can. By the end of the day, the Houthi is a group that cannot live without a war. And they were hoping, praying / wishing for an Israeli strike on them so they can strike back. That hasn't happened. So they pulled the gun themselves. And I think as long as there is a war, that's also the ultimate goal for the Houthis, whether with this recent escalation or overall. It's a group that cannot afford living in peace.
And you described this as a card that Iran had left to play. Do you think there are more cards for Iran to play? Donald Trump says he's already won this war. What's your assessment?
Well, Donald Trump is very similar to the Houthis. He always claims a victory in some way, and he doesn't mind losing anything and calling it a war. But for Iran specifically, I think there are still some cards within the Gulf itself. There is a cards that also, which I mean minorities inside the Gulf, it has not used. Iranians have invested a lot in the Red Sea beyond the Houthis. They have very good relationships with pirates. They have a very good relationship with the smugglers across the Horn of Africa. And by the end of the day, the Iranians, I think, have not yet activated their cells within Europe, within the United Kingdom, within America. I think that's a nightmare we will yet to see.
Worrying stuff. Faria al-Muslimi, thank you so much. Now, the war continues to have a devastating impact on Lebanon as Israel targets Iran's other main ally, Hezbollah. Today, there were funerals for several children killed, and among those killed in airstrikes today were 3 journalists, one of them a well-known war correspondent for Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV. From Beirut, our foreign affairs correspondent, Secunda Kamani, reports on another day of death and mourning in Lebanon.
Chants of defiance and screams of anguish as they mourn 2 victims of an Israeli airstrike. One, Jawad, just 11 years old. "Bury me along with your 2 eyes, my love," this woman cries. Jawad was killed alongside his cousin and an uncle in their home yesterday. The Hezbollah flag is draped over one of the coffins. "Death to America and death to Israel," some of those gathered shout. Ideological support for Hezbollah here is high, but everyone tells us this family were not involved in any military activity.
It's a civilian place. There is no missiles coming out of here, no nothing. No resistance around here. But we all are resistance. We all Hezbollah, okay, against this enemy, Israel, Netanyahu, and the big liar, Trump.
This was Jawad on the left. On the right, 9-year-old Sajid. Their uncle Raghib was an interior designer. This was the home he had built. And this is what's left of it now.
Well, you can see this home has been completely destroyed. A large extended family had been living here. Many of them, in fact, had fled to Beirut and only returned just a few days ago, thinking it was safer. And then the house was targeted.
My child, she was here, and the blood is coming from the head.
Wafa's children and nephews had been playing in the courtyard.
My daughter comes from outside. She said, Mom, I take it, but my son is here. He's dead.
Do you have any idea why this happened here?
No, nothing here. No, nothing here. They play for...
Not fishing. Not fishing.
Nothing.
Fishing here, no.
Only children, only children play football here.
Israel's army says it's killed hundreds of Hezbollah fighters in response to the group's cross-border attacks. But Israeli tactics here seem a repeat of its actions in Gaza. Today, killing at least 5 paramedics in the south of the country. 3 Lebanese journalists were killed in another strike that the Israeli military acknowledged was targeted and deliberate. It even released its own video of the attack, labelling without proof one of the journalists a Hezbollah member. The victims, Ali Shoaib, Fatima Fatouni and her brother Mohammed, worked for pro-Hezbollah channels, but were well-known media figures. The killing of journalists, irrespective of their affiliation, is a war crime. At the site of another Israeli attack, we meet Hassan. His sister and her 3-month-old baby were killed yesterday. The child, also named Hassan, was barely older than this war.
I want justice. I want the United Nations to investigate the massacres of civilians that are happening. We're at war, right? There are rules of war.
The Israeli army didn't reply to our questions about who or what they were targeting here. You can see for yourself who the victims were.